Sadistic Penguin Studios presents the At the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
And Tony Chalsa Burt.
I don't know this industry jargon, YP, MP, whatever, okay? All I know is that I cannot get a record contract. We cannot get a record contract unless I take these tapes.
It's almost time, so grab a drink, get your popcorn ready, and join the film discussion with two guys from Chicago talking movies.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the At the Show podcast, presented to you by Sadistic Penguin Studios. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tom Yumper Garcia, and I'm with my other co-host, Tony the Sugar Baggy Bird. How you doing, my man?
Doing great. We're here. It's Friday, and we're going to see what's in the box.
For sure, my friend. And according to Sam, it might be cookies.
Oh, I love cookies.
We have an action-packed show for you. With the release of the horror/crime drama Long Legs, we decided to go back to one of our favorite films and look at 1995's Seven. I know you and I are both big fans of David Fincher, and this is, I would say, the movie that kind of put him on the map. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just jump and say it's my favorite David Fincher. So very excited about this tonight.
Yeah, it's he has such good movies.
He does. He's got great catalog. I mean, there isn't one I don't like. I think it's just, we'll get to it later. It holds a special place by when I saw it. And again, seeing a director in that early stage of his career come up with something that awesome, it just always surprises me.
Yeah, especially coming from like the music world. He was he directed a lot of music videos for artists, but we're getting a little too ahead of ourselves. Better than the Social Network. Ooh. Whoa, Yumper is now right leaning. Wow. I'm sorry, Sam. But yeah, we can get to a little bit more of his movies to go into a deep dive in that. But let's go straight into our first segment, my friend, and go into what we have been watching.
That's me, and also, what were you just watching?
What were you watching this week, my friend?
Two movies here. One movie that me and Katie put on quite a lot, just to get that ridiculous feel. And I'm not talking about Buckaroo Banzai. I'm talking about Fear. You talk about a movie with just some of the greatest dialogue of all time.
It all could have been different, Mr. Walker. You should have allowed nature to take its course. In the end, it will anyway. So let me the fucking house!
Again, seeing the trailer and seeing Marky Mark, this was one of the very first movies where, again, he is no longer Marky Mark, and he is in this 1996 film that, honestly, it comes from James Foley, who's directed, shockingly, one of your favorites, Glengarry Glen Ross. So you're saying the gentleman who directs Glengarry Glen Ross, Fear's got to be somewhat good. I mean, I love William Peterson in this movie as the ridiculous stepfather, an early Reese Witherspoon. I just like the ridiculousness of Mark Wahlberg in this movie. It's just ridiculous. Would you ever see this movie?
Yeah, it's Mark Wahlberg's best performance as an actor.
Ooh, I like that. Was not expecting you to say that.
No, I'm just being facetious. It's an interesting film. I remember seeing it when it first came out. I remember seeing all the trailers for it when it first came out.
When's the last time you've seen it?
Oh, I haven't seen this film in at least like a good 10 years.
Give it a spin on it, because again, if you go into it with if you're watching I like watching those old thrillers because they're all so unbelievable. Like, this movie is very unbelievable. But Brian says Basketball Diaries is Marky Mark's finest. I mean, he's only in that movie about, not even half the movie. So, I mean, again, good performance. Happening, yes, that's a classic role. I would go with Boogie Nights as his best role, would be my favorite.
If I had to seriously think of his best role, I liked him a lot in The Departed.
That is true. That is very true. He was really good in that movie, but again, not holding the movie. You know what I mean? He's what, third cast, fourth cast down the line. I mean, in Boogie Nights, he is Boogie Nights. In Fear, he is the boyfriend. And I agree with your wife down here saying that Melissa Milano's character was really, really not good in the movie. She gives into his whims. But again, it's for a certain time period, and if you're looking for a certain vibe, just like this next movie that I picked, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. Not sure if you've ever seen this one, Yump, but again, this is 80s pretty much to the T, and it's loaded with just great actors.
You can convince her to try. John O'Connor.
I'm not worth it, Buckaroo. Forget about me. They'll never break me.
Penny, get off the phone.
You made me think of this movie last week when you picked RoboCop, because I go through then Peter Weller, who's got some other movies. This movie is just loaded with great actors: Jeff Goldblum, Christopher Lloyd, John Lithgow, Ellen Barkin, just loaded. And honestly, it's really, really out there, and it's really, really, really crazy. And honestly, I have not seen this movie in a long. I mean, when I watched it, I had not really had ever seen it. And especially if you're just looking for something that's different, it's really good.
Yeah, I've seen this movie. It's also got Clancy Brown's in this film too, and Dan Hedaya is in this film.
Clancy Brown is really great in anything.
Yeah, and the great Vincent Schiavelli, I think is how you pronounce his name. Schiavelli, the guy from if you don't know who he is, he's the teacher in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, the one that takes him to the morgue. This movie is out there. It's very, very to me, it's very hilarious. I'm a big sucker for Big Trouble in Little China. And this is like right up my alley with it. It's out there, and I like those films from the 80s. I thought the 80s about probably the best films like that were out there.
Well, it lets you really, honestly, they don't really give you that kind of free reign anymore. When you watch this movie and you're like, they got a budget for this? Someone gave them money for this? Because it doesn't seem like, or maybe especially after a movie like Mad Max, which was so awesome, unfortunately didn't make the money. I don't know if this would, if it came out today.
You know what? I don't know. I mean, there's probably worse movies that are out there right now that made money. So
that's true. Well, making money also doesn't indicate how good a movie is either.
Yeah,
I think we know that more than anything. But what have you been watching?
So the first film I watched is one of my go-tos when I'm working or doing some stuff is Street Kings. It's kind of a film that doesn't get talked a lot about with Keanu Reeves. He plays a kind of like alcoholic cop he kind of does a lot of things on the shady side for his police department detective, taking out criminals. He just kills them. And it actually has a appearance by Chris Evans in a more serious role. They're going with dirty cops, and great Forrest Whitaker's in this film. Really a lot of action. I like Keanu Reeves when he's doing serious stuff, and he kind of does the serious in here. And it's also got some a little bit of comedy in there for like their interactions between him and Chris Evans. So have you seen this one?
Oh, I love this movie. I could run a double feature with this and that Pride and Glory with Edward Norton, and I love this movie a lot. I really, 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 for those out there who like Forrest Whitaker, I mean, honestly, I love his performance in this movie. I love the ending. Tom, and he starts going off. He's like, "Look at me, Tom. It's in the wall." Like just the way he goes off.
Tear it down.
Together. And he's just like, Keanu's like, "No, I'm just not buying what you're selling." But performance, honestly, who else is great in this movie? Is House, Hugh Laurie. He does a really good job in this movie. I don't know how many, a lot of movies I know with him in it, but again, good movie. It was a great pick when you said you watched this one.
Yeah, one of my go-to favorites. And then on Saturday night, I dragged the wife out to go see the new Deadpool and Wolverine film. We watched the 10:30 show, and I was surprising. Like I thought it was going to be funny. I like Deadpool 1 and 2. I really love what Ryan Reynolds has done with the character. Um, yeah, I had to explain some of the funny parts to my wife because, she didn't understand some of them, but when I explained them to her, she got them. Because she's not, like, a big of a movie or comic book nerd as I am. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty hilarious. I thought Ryan Reynolds did an awesome job with the Deadpool character in this three-part trilogy. I look forward to seeing what he's going to do going forward. He wrote this film. I love the fact that Hugh Jackman actually came out of retirement of the Wolverine character for the film, and it was actually his idea to come out. Like, I know Ryan Reynolds has said publicly he wanted to work with him, but Hugh Jackman just called him up out of the blue and said he wants to do it. And they built a storyline around basically getting the character to come out alive. You know, Logan was such a great movie. They gave homage to that film, and they brought a lot of good cameos in it. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, so I highly recommend you go see it. I really enjoyed it. My buddy wants to go see it again, so Tone, I'm probably gonna have you come with us for that one because I know you want
Oh,
to see it.
yeah.
But yeah, I highly and I will definitely buy it when it comes on DVD because I enjoyed it that much.
I'm curious to see what it's all about. Again, as stated last week, I don't Marvel isn't my first go-to to the movies, but when somebody like you who likes great movies or some of the awesome people in the comments say that it's a good movie, I'm definitely going to check it out. And honestly, I've liked Hugh ever since I've seen Swordfish in the movie theater. So like I'll see Hugh and I'll see him in anything. I mean, really, I mean, I'll watch him in, well, not everything. I think
Yeah,
I skipped Les Miserables. But that being said,
but
he
you
did
know
have
what?
this one that was at HBO. It was called Bad Education, where he played a principal. It was really good. He's a great actor, so
He
I
is.
wouldn't let Les.
He's very versatile. He like, even though you don't like Les Miserables, he does The Greatest Showman.
Mhm.
He can
Oh
do
yeah,
Broadway. He can do comedy. He can do drama. I really liked him in the film with Christian Bale, The Prestige. I liked him in the film with what was it called? Prisoners.
Prisoners. Real Steel isn't terrible.
Yeah, Real Steel. I liked even outside like of his Marvel roles.
Van
He's
Helsing.
Van Helsing. I remember when that first came out. That was like his big hit, like solo hit.
Yeah.
Um, You know, he's good. He's an entertaining actor.
This is a great movie right here. Just mentioned here, Prisoners does a great job in this movie.
Mhm.
Now, this is my like. If you ask me, I mean, if Prisoners when it came out and Deadpool and Wolverine were playing neck to neck, I would have went and seen Prisoners. So you telling me about Deadpool and Wolverine excites me because I don't know if nobody was telling me about it. It would be something that I would go and see because I don't usually like we talked last week. It's been a long time. Like it's probably hasn't been since that last Endgame that I have like went to the theater. I mean, I did go. I think I went to Captain Marvel. That was the last one I went to. But you know,
My son watches Endgame like every day.
hey, that's a fun movie.
It's very depressing, and I'm like, he likes it. He likes Endgame. But that's what we've been watching this week. Let us know what you've been watching over at the show pod on Twitter or X or whatever it is next week. If it gets sold, I don't know. Or let us know in the comments of the YouTubes or on Facebook. Yes, we are on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram at the show pod. Tone, before we go into the meat and potatoes of this show, we want to talk a little bit news and rumors today.
Oh yeah.
So, if you haven't heard, the big news out of the San Diego Comic-Con is the return of Robert Downey Jr. into the Marvel series or the Avengers saga as Doctor Doom. Did you happen to watch this video?
His introduction?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Yes. Yes, I did.
So, I know I shared it with you guys. I texted to you and Brian. I actually got the news while I was watching Deadpool and Wolverine. All it blew up there, and I watched the video, and I thought it was a pretty cool, reveal of him as Doctor Doom. And it's just hilarious that this got revealed when you were mentioning it in our superhero episode last week.
It's crazy that in real time sometimes that because honestly, it was it's cool and it's shocking in a way. I'm curious to see how this all develops. They haven't given any kind of stone cold on what the again rumors are. I did think I read something today where he's supposed to be the main the main Doom, like this isn't a variant. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping this doesn't turn into he's actually Tony Stark. But I don't know. I don't really know how I feel.
Yeah, Comic Punk guy CPG has wrote a good little article on it in our Sadistic Pigment Studios website. Check it out. He has a little more in-depth knowledge of comics. I mean, hence the name Comic Punk guy. But you know, I've seen other stories that saying that he is going to be basically a variant. Like Sam just said, he can be the main Doom. There's other ones that saying that Victor Von Doom switched bodies with him to take over his wealth. So I'm just very curious, and I love the fact he's back, and I love that he did something different. Instead of coming back as the nostalgia Tony Stark, he's coming back as a new character, which spawned a bunch of memes, of course, with the Tony Stark meme. He could play everybody in the Avengers, which I thought was hilarious. But it's kind of cool that we have a great actor coming back to a series that missed him.
That's very true. My question into play, the unfortunate devil's advocate here. What would have come of this if Jonathan Majors didn't run into his problems in Kang's Dynasty, which was supposed to be what the name of the Avengers movie? I mean, are we still looking at Robert Downey Jr. or was Robert Downey Jr. like a pivot from that?
So that was my second point I was going to get to. There's been a lot of controversy going around, a lot of discussion with the fact that Robert Downey Jr. and Urza Miller still have jobs, and Jonathan Majors doesn't. People think it's unfair. Personally, and this is my opinion, you have to remember that Robert Downey Jr.'s issues were way before Marvel. This is like 90s and 80s. He late 80s, early 90s to mid 90s. He had a lot of issues with drugs, and he was in and out of jail. He was basically on Hollywood's blacklist. Ally McBeal, I think, was his last big thing before he got locked up, and then he started doing small things after that. When he was going to do Iron Man, there was a big pushback against him doing it. Nobody wanted him to do it. They thought it was going to bomb, and he worked his way up. He got clean and sober, and he eventually won an Oscar. And he's making $100 million for these two pictures. So I think that he deserves to be in this. His issues started before the Marvel series but was acquired by Disney. He resurrected his career. It seems to be doing well, and nothing's come out bad about him since like the 90s. And in terms of Urza Miller, I think he should be fired. I've been telling you that for since the allegations of him came out. He shouldn't have a job, and we don't know if he still has one because James Gunn hasn't said it definitely that he has one. But in terms of Jonathan Majors, he was
it's more of like crime. The story. Like, was this story in the can waiting or was this a replacement because of Jonathan Majors doing whatever stupid
I don't
stuff?
think it was a replacement. I think Kane was going to be the main focus, and Downey Jr. really came back in some possible way because they've been talking about it for years. But in terms of Jonathan Majors not being a cast and people are thinking it's unfair, he got caught doing he got in trouble while in the process of being with Disney, and Disney fired him. That's just going to happen. I hope that he
could
comes
be
back.
wrong. Allegations or whatever, but I don't remember was there a lot of abuse allegations with Downey? I thought it was a lot of more drugs.
It was drugs. Yeah, it was drugs. But it's
where
also
Jonathan Majors was accused of actually like putting his hands on somebody. It wasn't drugs. It was, which is a little bit different to me. I could be wrong, but that's
also, like, I mean, people are bringing up issues of Downey from 40 years ago.
That's true too.
And it's like apples and oranges. But like in terms of Urza Miller, because they asked Jonathan Majors about this, and he gave a respectful response. He's upset about not being cast, and he wishes them both the best. But Urza Miller shouldn't have a job. But Jonathan Majors, hopefully this puts him on the right path to recovery, and then eventually he works his way back. You never know. Redemption can happen.
That is true.
But he just lost his job because it happened while he was in contract with Disney, and they let him go. It's not like this is something that happened before and then he came back. No, it would happen when you're in. And it's like any job's gonna let you go. I'm sorry, that's just what happens. Is it fair? Yeah, it kind of is fair because he messed up while he was doing it. I just don't get the public outcry. That's just my opinion, my rant on it.
We get, I mean, some people might say, and they have, well, who's running the ship over there? Isn't it Downey Jr.'s wife? You know what I mean? So like she has had pull for him to be put into these positions, which has been said, which he should be. I love Downey Jr. I loved when they made, like, a lot of people were complaining when they made this announcement with him. Just watch it. Let's see the movie first. We talked about that last week. Let's see the movie. Let's see how he does Doctor Doom, and then we judge it from there, just like X-Men and Deadpool. See it first,
Yeah.
then judge it.
And one thing that was another big, topic besides him being recast and then the Jonathan Majors news is that he's making $100 million and the Russos are making $80 million. People are upset about this, and I'm like, why? Like, Downey Jr. built, that franchise and took that franchise on his back. Like, he is the face of that franchise. He should get paid as much money as they make billions of dollars. As much money as they're making, the actors should get more of a bigger piece of what the film is making, in my opinion, because they put all the work in, the time in, and all that. And the Russos did all the writing, so I have no issue with him getting his bread. Like,
Yeah,
hopefully that trickles down to the other actors.
Yeah, I mean, I have Downey Jr. again for this. He also just won an Oscar again. But I hate to bring this up because it's a fair point. When Terrence Howard won an Oscar, they gave him Iron Man and they gave him a bigger contract than Downey Jr. And we brought it up last week, and I love Don Cheadle more than I like. So I think it's better that he came in. But when push came to shove the next time and Downey was going to get more than him, which was fair. But again, this is just the way things roll sometimes too.
Yeah, but Terrence Howard didn't win an Oscar.
For Crash? For Crash, he didn't win an Oscar for Crash?
The film won an Oscar, but he didn't win an Oscar.
Oh, I mean, but like the movie was, I mean, his performance was the main focus. When Iron Man came out, he got the most money out of anybody because of the performance in Crash. Downey Jr. at that point should have gotten more money because of his career, but because of the downside of hiring Downey, he didn't get more money. But then the movie blows up, and of course,
but it's also with terms of the Terrence Howard thing, it's the issues he had with Jon Favreau. So I think that kind of messed. Not saying it's a good excuse, but that kind of, like, if you're not gelling with the director, then it's
Well, the first thing, and that might have came out later, but the first thing is that when they came to that second movie, as you stated last week, his screen time was cut and his money was cut. And then that was the problem with Favreau, was that, why are you cutting my screen time and why are you cutting my money? But again, because then what's his name? Don Cheadle comes in and his role isn't really huge. Don Cheadle's a good working man. I think Terrence Howard thought a little bit too highly of himself and overplayed his hand. That's me personally. I would have much rather got paid whatever I got paid than do Empire, but that's just me.
I liked Terrence Howard. I met him a couple times. He's a nice guy.
Is he?
But yeah, he's
I
a very
like him
nice
in
guy.
movies. I think he's great in Dead Presidents. I'm just saying, compared to Don Cheadle.
Well,
if you met Don Cheadle, you'd probably like him more.
I would love Don Cheadle. I'm just saying,
I know,
like, if people say Terrence Howard's a kind of a mean guy, he's actually, he was very nice to me and my coworkers.
That's what it is. I think you told that story before, which was an awesome story. And again, that's what just shows you, again, some people say people are jerks, and you meet them, you know what I mean? So that's awesome.
Yeah. But I know we kind of rambled on. I rambled on for this one because I was kind of annoyed.
Very good.
That is our news and rumors segment this week. So looking forward to Mr. Downey Jr. and his new role of Doctor Doom. I actually mentioned it to my son today, so he's a little excited to see what's going to happen. I believe the Avengers, it comes out in 2025. I think they're going for this one. Not mistaken, 2025 or 2026.
No.
But I'm looking forward to it.
I'm not, and I'll say just something very controversial right here, and I have no problem. Back when it came on HBO, that last Fantastic Four played a lot, and I watched it a lot, and I found some good things in it. But that's just me. That's just
know, it's funny. It's funny you mention that because this is up Sam Reeves' alley. I was watching the Bulls game a few years ago, and Michael B. Jordan was at the Bulls game.
Ooh,
and Stacey King, the Bulls color man and former Bulls player, was like talking about him. He's like, "Oh, that's Michael B. Jordan. He was in one of the greatest movies I've seen and one of the worst movies I've ever seen." He's like, "I saw Creed and I loved it. It's like one of the greatest movies I've ever seen." And then he was in Fantastic Four, and that was like one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. So that's every time I think of that Fantastic Four, I think of Stacey King's comment there.
Nice.
But yeah, I'll check that one back out. They did get there is a homage to that film a little bit in the Deadpool and Wolverine.
Well, there's just I will sit and I will actually go on a stage of 400 people, and if I could get a lot of different footage, I'm just not seeing a lot of difference between that and like the first Thor or some of the stuff in some of the movies. Like there just isn't just so far apart. But that's what happens sometimes with the internet.
Well,
The
our
internet
last
picked up.
our last guest last week, Cotton, he hated the first Thor.
That's it. Well, that's it. But then again, look, I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything, or maybe I will. They brought back one of the characters in the new Deadpool and Wolverine. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? From the ones then those really, honestly, those suck too. I mean, those suck. Just never mind.
Hey
Let me
man, you
move
Michael
forward.
Chiklis, bro. Michael Chiklis.
I do like Michael Chiklis. All right.
But that's our news and rumors. Moving on, my friend. We just wanted to mention fellow Penguin, Marge. This Penguin Marge has a walk for PKD Foundation. That's the Polycystic Kidney Disease Foundation. She does a walk every year, and I believe she's going to be doing it next month in September. Information can be found on her Twitter account at Marge Raguso, or MARJRAGUSO. If you can donate to help her out, that would be great. I'm going to drop the link in the chat as well. She does a walk every year. Marge actually has this disease as well, and I know people in her family have it. So she does a walk for it to raise money and awareness for it, and it's a really, really good cause. I will be donating soon to it, and we'll be pumping it out for each show until she does her walk, to get some recognition and hopefully some donations her way. Check it out. Really, really good cause. Marge does this every year, and it's like I know I always tell her, like, let me know when she's about to do it so we can pump it in the show.
Definitely. Really quick here before we go into 7. Saw this movie recently, and this movie definitely gave me what I would deem to be very big 7 vibes.
You could have made nice with me, but you didn't.
Just honestly, these are my favorite type of movies. If you ask me what are my favorite type of movies, they like border the line of thriller and horror and just really crazy. And honestly, putting all of my chips on the table to see these movies, and I do that, and then a lot of times walk out disappointed. I didn't walk out disappointed from this movie, and honestly, it's just broken the records for Neon. The most money made by a rated R movie. Just really cool.
Yeah, so I've heard actually both sides of the argument in terms of long legs. I've heard people who really loved it, like me, and then I heard people who really did not like it, that I know, and they give really, really good valid points. I think one of the
What are the? I'm curious because this might be where I get a little heated. I would like to hear some of these valid points.
one of them I noticed was that they said it was just. It seems like they were just trying, instead of paying homage to Silence of the Lambs, they were trying to reenact like a more.
I'm sorry. There's nothing. What's Silence of the Lambs about this?
Actually,
movie?
There is a lot of Silence of the Lambs homage in this film.
Well, I mean, like when you watch the movie,
FBI
character,
yeah, of
just
the
a
main
female.
character.
What?
No,
First of all, Jodie Foster didn't suffer from whatever this girl in this movie was suffering.
well, they're doing a paranormal thing on it.
There was no paranormal. I mean, honestly, Silence of the Lambs wasn't as much paranormal as this movie.
Well,
was.
that's what I'm saying. That there's a lot of Silence of the Lambs reference in this film that they didn't like. They also didn't thought Nicolas Cage's performance wasn't that great. It was over the top, which, I mean, looking at it, it is. But
I think a lot of people went into this movie and thinking it was a horror movie, a straight up horror movie, and it's not a straight up horror movie. So when you're going in there thinking that Nicolas Cage is going to be walking around like a straight up horror character, when the reality is he's playing more like a Silence of the Lambs, and I guarantee most people who like straight up horror, they don't put Silence of the Lambs as one of their favorite horror movies or even consider it horror. So like, or 7, or these type of movies. That's just my point. I've never gotten heated on the show. I just love to this point. Go ahead.
No, I'm telling you this arguments I've read. Also, again, the people have, it's just more of the Nicolas Cage issues. Also, they didn't like the story. They said it was a little too choppy. It didn't make sense in terms of how things are happening. They wanted to have a little bit more substance to it, which I can kind of agree to it to point because I have consumed a lot of Long Legs material in terms of, the Birthday Murders website, which is a fake website put out by the Neon Company to promote the film.
Mhm.
And I love that fact because it makes you go back to the Blair Witch Project. When
Mhm.
that film was released, they released their fake website, even though this is not, you know, marketed as a real life true story. It's still kinda cool to go back and read it, and I think, that's cool for me, but as a person that just goes to films and watches them, I can see they would like a little bit more substance of the character. Now, the issue with that is you would probably say, "Well, they can make another film explaining the Longlegs character." Well, Nicolas Cage has come out and said he's not going to do any more serial killer films.
And I'm only would say this not to you, but whoever would be presenting this in the room, then let's just not even talk about tonight's movie. Because what do we know about tonight's killer in Seven? We know less about him than we know about Nicolas Cage. And he's really hailed as one of the best of all time. Again, we're living in a world where you can look at a movie and you're taking these things and then saying, like, I get it. You could have got more Nicolas Cage. He could have did more scary stuff. He could have showed more killing. But like it's like Jaws. These movies, a lot of people in my like the complaining, it's a movie where but I get it. I guess I get some of those valid points.
Yeah,
To
and
me,
then the
if you
last oh, go ahead.
go on.
No,
Go
go
on.
ahead. No.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
say if you then go and see a movie like Wolverine and Deadpool, and not you, and walk out of the movie and go, boy, this really was and I know all what happens in that movie. This is coaxial, this makes sense. This is exactly what I will then have another problem, but that's not what we're doing here. I'm just bringing that on my own thing up.
Did he really have long legs? He does, Jen. He actually explains that he has long legs in the film.
My wife didn't like them. My wife walked out of the movie and she didn't really understand it. I did to her what you did on the way home from Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm trying to explain my
See,
way.
Jen, my wife will not watch this film because it deals with it's
Katie,
hints
what,
and stuff.
Katie walked out and looked at me and says, "What the f did you bring me to?" I was trying to hope it was a little bit more on not on as she doesn't like the more of the occult religious type of stuff. And
Yeah, and that was two things on terms of what's going on in this, in terms of horror movies in 2024. It seems that we're targeting a lot of occult films. The Night with the Devil, this film, and then there's a couple more coming out. And it's kind of like they're not coming with original ideas. My counter argument to that is I thought this
even you just saying that right there, the Night of the Devil, and this is completely different kind of a cult, but feel free to feel that.
No, I'm just saying that's with the whole sense of I understand what they were going for in this film as a supporter of the film. And the other one was, and this is kind of I can understand this one, is that people are saying, there was a lot of hype for it. There's like the opening scene was considered one of the one of the greatest in horror history. I don't agree with that personally.
Well, I won't say in history, but like if right now I took you right now out in the middle of nowhere and we start just looking at these houses and I start telling you stories, imagining what could be going on inside the story, and the story is this, like what did I keep saying to my wife after? Lived in the big house on the hill. Nobody ever came. Nobody. The way the mother, the way it all plays together. I think that's what it is. It's more of a sum of all of its pieces. Okay, it's more.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's a bad film.
No,
I'm just saying that the overhype
you
of
didn't
saying
sing this. You didn't sing this on the way home.
Let me in now, and it can be nice.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I've actually seen somebody cosplay him already, which is pretty funny. But if you are interested, if you have seen the film and you want to see a little bit more, there's a couple of TikTok accounts out there that actually go into great detail of the long legs character. They explain why he looks the way he looks, why he acts the way he acts. And I'm hoping that they expand upon this story for a little bit. But I hope fear is that they go into Saw territory, which is I do not want that to happen.
I will go the other way. I am not seeing why they would need to do anything more than what this is.
I would like
just leave it where
a
it is.
progressive story of like what happens with the FBI agent or something from that. Like, does he continue, or just a little bit more background on him? But I mean, Wonder if he'll be on Mindhunter. Ooh,
Yep.
maybe. Well, he's dead, so he can't be on Mindhunter.
I think I got some dialogue from if they do a part 2. I already got the dialogue. Here it is.
Every day I can't walk, I can't hump, you know? Go ahead and kill me, you cocksucker. Every day I can't walk, I can't hump.
Oh, he did have long legs. Well, he can't.
See, there you go. There you go.
Oh yeah, I did do a spoiler alert there. My bad, Sam. But yeah, anyway, and also Mindhunter deals with real people.
Great conversation. That was fun.
But let's get into our meat and potatoes of the film industry. What expired, Long Legs, and probably other films is the 1995 film Seven. That is directed by David Fincher. Mr. Burt, where was the first time you saw Seven?
River Oaks Theaters. A buddy of mine says I'll remember. I remember him pretty much. It was a daytime showing, and he knew a lot about movies in 7th grade that I I was clueless. And he's like, even at the end, he's like, "You won't believe who's at the end of this movie." I didn't know who the hell Kevin Spacey was. But again, the feelings that I got were just like the way the murders were. See, like that was the movies that like me and my mom watched, where like should we go to the video store and find like a murder mystery, like where you don't know who the killer is and who is it going to be. And this one was just building to extremities. How about you? When's the first time you saw it?
I saw it the year it came out. Not at the movie theater. I actually saw it on VHS. Again, rented it from the movie store, and it's been one of my movies I play at least twice, 3 times a year. Not a great like happy time watch.
Oh no.
I do it more for the analytical stuff. I'm a huge fan. Like my first passion was in criminal justice and history. Psychology was my first 2 degrees for bachelor's degree. So that was something I was always interested. I was like really. I read the guy who created Mindhunter. You know, I read his book when I was younger, and that really got me interested in being a forensic psychologist, which I never did. But you know, Jonathan Douglas's book of Mindhunter got me into it, and like movies like this are right up my alley. So I watched this film. I watched any Zodiac, any of these films. I constantly watch like at least once or twice a year. This one a little bit more because I love the style of it.
You know, in my previous incarnations of talking about film, what we're doing tonight and what we've done with Usual Suspects, it's a dream come true, because this is one of my favorite movies. And I mean, I could talk about this movie and which we're going to do in depth and length. And it's just really because of the performances, because of the script, because of David Fincher. There's just so much that goes into it.
Yeah. So let's just go right into it, my friend. Let's go into the development.
Let's do it.
In my thoughts, I use the technique of positive visualization.
So the development of the script was written in the 1990s. The screenplay for Seven was penned by Andrew Kevin Walker. Walker, who was working at night as a security guard at the time, drew from his personal experiences of feeling isolated and disturbed by his surroundings. He initially titled the film Seven, and it was inspired with his fascination of the darker aspects of the human nature. Also, he was living out, I believe, in New York at the time, a lot of high crime at the time. So he drew a lot of those influences into, his screenwriting. He was also influenced by the classic noir films, and I think you see a lot of that in this film. The film noir films of detective fiction, which I love. It's gritty, kind of dark atmosphere, which is really, really done well in this film. And it was inspired by urban decay, like I said, around his surroundings, stuff that he saw, and it really kind of drove his story. He also drew influences from things like the film Chinatown and The French Connection, great detective films, Popeye Doyle and Jack Nicholson in Chinatown, 2 other great ones. Edgar Allan Poe also gave him some exceptionalist themes to his script writing and whatnot. He eventually had to sell the script, but was met with a bunch of skepticism because it's too dark and disturbing, and I can understand that. I mean, we just talked about the '80s being that kind of that open free roam kind of time, and in the '90s, I guess they were pushing back a little bit on it. Like this might be a little too dark. And if you think about it, this film is very dark for the time period. It's something that, I think in terms of this style of film with Terrifier coming out and this kind of like even Long Legs, this style of film gets a little bit more easily made now than it would in the '90s when those first these films weren't really known. And like I Silence of the Lambs was probably as gritty a thing as a serial killer film you could think of at the time, and this was pushed to the max, a better version to me, a better version.
I can honestly tell you that, like, as much as I was just, "Oh, Long Legs, Seven is just a greater movie than Long Legs will ever be because of it's just got a lot of weight behind it. It's just it feels like a prized fighter. It could go against any movie like this and win because of everything that's in it.
Yeah. Eventually, the script was acquired by New Line Cinema under the leadership of executive Robert Shea. He loved the potential of the film and decided to acquire it. Again, taking a big risk. The studio was intrigued by the script's unique approach to crime and its psychological depth, which I love about it. Uh, Before finalizing the project, several revisions were made to the screenplay, including adjustments to ensure a more commercial appeal while retaining its original intensity. Notable changes included refining some character motivations and plot details to enhance the narrative flow, which is usually done with a lot of scripts. It's very rare that a script gets written without a rewrite or some work on it. Just ask Kevin Smith; he does it all the time for Ben Affleck. Uh, in terms of finding a director, uh, David Fincher, of course, is known for directing this film. He was directing music videos, and he was selected to direct Seven after being recommended by producer Arnold Kopelson. Fincher's dark and visual striking style was seen as a perfect match for the film's tone and thematic depth. However, there were other directors that were actually considered for this film. One, the great Ridley Scott, was considered for directing. Scott was intrigued, but he ultimately chose to focus on other projects. Martin Scorsese expressed interest in this screenplay, but was unable to commit due to scheduling conflicts. Michael Mann, for all those who loved Heat, was considered, given his experience with crime and dramas. However, he declined to do the project, opting instead to do Heat. So he did Heat instead of this film, which is a good choice by him because Heat is awesome as well. Uh, One that I found really crazy, who I love a lot, is Guillermo del Toro was actually considered to direct the film. He turned down the chance to direct it because as a romantic, he didn't subscribe to the script's dark view of the world. Uh, Thinking of directors, I wonder how Alex Porras would have been for this film. He directed The Crow and Dark City. I wonder how he would get because he's really good in taking atmosphere. Uh, how he could have done for this, but it's crazy that those four directors turned this one down.
It is. I mean, all of them are, as you said, heavyweight directors. Um, and David Fincher, coming up to this point, what he had done before this wasn't, I don't know. We'll have to have our own conversation on Alien 3 one day. But again,
Mhm.
I don't know if Alien 3 was like, okay, we're gonna give this guy 7. I think it came a little bit later too.
Yeah, and so it was like it's his big, time. It's his big shot. He did Alien 3, but this is like his mainstream vision. Uh, and like we said, he did a lot of music videos for artists in the past. But Fincher's distinctive vision and commitment to the material made him the ideal choice for this project. Which, congratulations to Fincher, and great choice by the studio hiring him.
Mhm.
In terms of the main roles and casting decisions, we have the role of Detective Somerset was originally offered to Gene Hackman, who was interested but declined due to scheduling conflicts with other commitments. But you have to remember Gene Hackman was just getting over playing villains. He did not want to do villains. He turned down the role of actually Hannibal Lecter for Silence of the Lambs. He had to be convinced to be the villain in Unforgiven, which is one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie. So this is in 1995. He decided to kind of turn away from this one. He was interested, but decided not to do it. One of your boys, man, Al Pacino, was attached to play the role,
Hooah!
but he declined. Um, Another person that was considered for the role was Harrison Ford.
Ooh.
Ultimately, Morgan Freeman was cast for his ability to bring gravitas and depth to the role of the seasoned detective nearing retirement. Morgan Freeman has the greatest voice, I think, in the history of movies, in my opinion. Calming. I love his narration. Shawshank is, you know, a masterclass in film. His narration to go along with just based off a short story, which I think is so awesome that it's one of the best films ever made, in my opinion. Uh, and I love that he's in this film. I can't see anybody else playing this role of Somerset than Morgan Freeman. I think he does a great job, and his chemistry with the person I'm going to talk with next is very, very good. What about you?
He's you can't replace him. But I mean, when you just said all those people, I mean, I could see Hackman. He could pull it off. But other than that, I mean, I don't even want to think about that because Morgan Freeman's performance is so legendary and great. You can't replace him. And as you stated, there's scenes that we'll get to later that his voice, if it's not there, I don't think that Hackman could have pulled off. So we'll
Yeah,
talk about that later.
and I love Sam. Oh God, Chino would have been
Oh,
awful
he
in
would
this.
have.
You know, John Doe. For the role of Detective Mills,
Could have played the
Tom-
Spacey part, maybe. No, I'm just kidding.
maybe. Detective Mills. Tom Cruise was initially considered for the role of Detective Mills, but declined due to concerns over the film's dark subject matter. Again, like I said, this is something that was never really explored at the time, were these kind of subjects. Denzel Washington turned down the role of Mills. He's stating to Entertainment Weekly that the film was just too dark and evil. He later would go on to say he regretted turning it down upon screening it. Sylvester Stallone turned down the role of Mills. He told Ain't It Cool News that it was a mistake. Brad Pitt was cast after a series of auditions, praised for his intense and dynamic performance that balanced vulnerability and strength. And I also read that Pitt had gone and saw something that Fincher had done. I believe it was Lock, Cock, the Barrows that he saw. And he said, he asked Fincher if he could be in his next film. So Fincher always had him in mind. What do you think about those people who turned down the role of Detective Mills?
There's no one else who could, but honestly, Denzel could have did the role. I think he could have played the role really well. But again, Brad Pitt does the role. I don't want to rethink any of these other people, but maybe tonight when I'm laying down, I'll imagine Denzel and Gene Hackman playing both of these roles.
Yeah. You know what? I really would. It would have been interesting to see Denzel and Morgan Freeman.
Oh yeah, definitely would have been
It would
very
have been kind of cool. I think. Don't get me wrong. Brad Pitt's awesome in it. I just think it would have been kind of cool to see them two in the film. But I'm happy. Mills was cast as Brad Pitt. In terms of, Tracy Mills, played by Gwyneth Paltrow. Julia Roberts was actually the leading candidate for the role of Tracy Mills. However, she turned down the role, citing desires to focus on lighter projects at the time. I guess Runaway Bride or whatever the hell she was doing was more lighter than this.
should have took this
Uh,
role.
Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow was cast, bringing a pungent and compelling portrayal of the Mills' wife, which added emotional weight to the film. Brad Pitt has gone on record saying that she was the only light in this film. Everything is so dark, but Gwyneth Paltrow was the only light. For the role of John Doe, John C. Reilly was considered for the role of John Doe, but was deemed unsuitable for its part's psychological complexity, which I thought was pretty hilarious. Val Kilmer turned down the role of John Doe. Also, I don't have it in my notes, but I read it earlier, and I wanted to mention this. Ned Beatty,
Oh,
who is, you might remember from Back to School as Dean Martin.
Deliverance. He squealed like a pig.
Yes, Deliverance. He squealed like a pig. He's also in Roseanne as
Sure is Dan's father.
Yeah, John Jungerman's dad. He was considered for the role of John Doe because he looked like him when they did the sketches of John Doe. And they're like, "Oh, let's do Ned Beatty." He turned it down. But Kevin Spacey was chosen for his ability to convey the chilling and enigmatic nature of the film's antagonist, delivering a memorable and haunting performance. Who would have known that Kevin Spacey was a bad guy? Can be a bad guy. But I did like a quote that Fincher told Spacey. he said, "This film's gonna be great, not because of you, but you're gonna feel it's the one of the greatest films you've ever been a part of." And Spacey says that's true to this day.
Hmm.
Where Spacey was not marketed at all. He was left up as a surprise. He didn't show up until the end credits with his name, which I thought was awesome. And it was like one of the first twists of the film. So, spoiler alert, I'm sorry, but we are going to go do a film breakdown. Kaiser Soze showed up. Yes, he did. For supporting and minor roles, Arlie Emery was considered for the role of the police captain. And then he auditioned originally for the role of John Doe. David Fincher recollects the former Marine drill instructor made the serial killer's character completely unsympathetic. Not that Kevin's more unsympathetic, says the director, but he felt Emery's take on the character was cut and dry without much room for any gray area. So I don't know if he went in there and started like talking like he did in Saving Silverman. Kill him. But or in Full Metal Jacket. But yeah, I would love to see that, audition tape. And then
good.
yeah, finally Richard Roundtree was cast as a district attorney Anthony Talbert. Roundtree, who is a great character actor, just passed last year. You know any good Richard Roundtree films, Tom?
Oh yeah, I think there's one out there. I think it was called Shaft. Classic. He's actually got this new movie. It was his last role. It's playing at the theater. I'm gonna think of the name here in a second. It's with him and June Squibb. It's like an action movie. And she's like, and he's like her account, like her, like a helper in this, like her Robin to her Batman. And they like try to like get these gangsters and like get their money back. And
Thelma,
yeah.
it's called.
And honestly, the trailers look ridiculously hilarious because they're like on this little scooter and they're like trying to get away. But I honestly, another movie, it wasn't great, but it's cool. He was cool in the newest Shaft that came out the last couple years ago, and he shows up in it. I'm a big Richard Roundtree fan, so it's cool he's in this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Person that you've seen in films that you've seen him in the films, but you don't really remember from specific, things. Like he was
Corky Romano, right here.
Corky Romano, Theodore Rex. He was also in Steel.
Oh yeah.
He was Uncle Joe in Steel. I remember that. The horrible Shaquille O'Neal film. But yeah, there were casting challenges. The casting process involved careful consideration of the actors who could handle the intense and often disturbing material that was made. So the role required a balance of star power and acting skill to convey the film's complex emotion and themes. In terms of music, the original score was done by Howard Shore. Howard Shore, who he's known for his work on Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Silence of the Lambs, was chosen to compose the score for this film. His score was pivotal in establishing the film's dark and unsettling atmosphere, incorporating orchestral elements with ambient and electric sounds. I thought the score was very, very good in terms of the film score. It blends a lot of orchestral instruments with like electronic and industrial sounds, which I thought was cool. He used a minimalist approach in it with some compositions to create a sense of like foreboding or psychological tension, which I liked. Usually in a film, I think the score is just as much as important as the actors on screen. When you have that, ominous music, and it's kind of makes a joke of like forgetting Sarah Marshall, play something ominous in there. But in this film, I think it's so well done. I really like the way Howard Shore did this film. Again, I think this film, in terms of like his scoring, is just better than Silence of the Lambs. But Tone, getting to what you really want to talk about, the soundtrack choices of Seven. Notable tracks and artists of the soundtrack had 9 Inch Nails for the track Closer. It's actually used in the opening credits. Marilyn Manson for the song The Beautiful People was featured in the film, aligning with the film's themes of social decay. And then you had David Bowie's The Heart's Filthy Lesson was included in the soundtrack, acting a layer of introspective and haunting quality. The soundtrack was selected to complement the film's disturbing visuals and themes. Fincher and the production team chose tracks that could enhance the psychological impact of the film. It's crazy because only 9 Inch Nails is used in terms of like more of the hardcore, I would say, industrial rock kind of vibe in the beginning of the film because most of the music you hear in it is either blues or like old school from because they're in
They do
Somerset's.
play Gravity Kills Guilty at one scene when they go into the club and it's
Yeah,
like
they're telling you to turn it off, turn it off. Yeah, yeah. But in terms of like music, like
yeah, I know, yeah.
you don't really. It's like that's like the main
Soundtrack's
focus.
actually got a really diverse soundtrack, taking a look at it. I mean, you have very diverse, it starts off with the Statler brothers who does Flowers on the Wall on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, all the way to, Love Plus One by Haircut 100. Just a lot of different stuff on the soundtrack. But if I specifically remember which are both of those songs at the beginning and at the end, because honestly, it's a really cool bookend to the movie, I think. The static of both of those songs. But you're right, the movie has a lot more blues and it's not like an industrial soundtrack by any means.
Yeah. So that is our development of how the film was made. We went into a little deep into the soundtrack. We went a little bit into how the actors were cast, how the director was chosen, like we always do, and how the film came to be in terms of story, my friend. Any final thoughts on the development, Tone?
No, it's always cool to go through and see some of these actors that were in this. Thank the Lord Tom Cruise wasn't, or Al Pacino. So thank you. Thank you, you two. And I love you guys in other movies, just not this one.
Yes, sir. Let's go into our film breakdown, my friend.
Let's do it.
See the arc? He starts down here. He ends up here. Where's my arc, Paulie?
What fascinated you most about it? Was it the character, the ensemble of people involved?
Well, there was all these elements, and it was. I did like the character. I wanted to get something more human, more flawed, more realistic. Morgan definitely.
Brad Pitt, young Brad Pitt, swoon. The opening of the film begins with Somerset actually getting ready to go to a crime scene. Morgan Freeman's character gets stressed. I think he takes a shower, gets stressed, and he, kind of goes out to the crime scene. And as we look through the city as he's going, it's raining. It's kind of gloomy. You get that really like film noir, detective noir kind of type of feel to it. What'd you think of this before we go into the, the opening credits, like the basic of going to the crime scene to the fat man's, crime scene?
One, and I bring this up all the time. Like when it's raining outside, I said it's like 7 outside. I've said this a million times because it's a vibe. It's a vibe right from the get-go. It's dark, it's raining, it's, as you stated, there's no light at all. And then you go into this apartment, and again, later a movie comes out, The Whale. You know what I mean? This is like if they left that character alone for a long time. And then for them to have to go into the movie, into the apartment, and have to start doing your detective work. Empathetically, I can't think of anything that would be tougher to do your job, but right off the bat there, you're getting the vibes of what's to come.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because this is the first interaction we see between Somerset and Mills, coming Brad Pitt's character, and he talks to him outside and asks him, "Why here? Why'd you choose to come here?" That's something I love about the film. They never distinctly explain where here is. It's just a metropolitan area, which I love. That it could be anywhere, but like wherever they're at, he's like, "Why here?" And that kind of plays a theme into Somerset's psyche throughout the film, and kind of like an overtone message of the film, which I thought was very well done. Then after they meet, we cut to the opening credits, as they say, and we see a bunch of crazy images played to a rendition of Closer by Nine Inch Nails. The visuals have bloody fingerprints, scratched film textures, extreme close-ups of disturbing objects. They're jarring. people are freaking out. One thing I like about this is that Kyle Cooper was known for his work on other memorable opening sequences, designed the credits to invoke discomfort and foreshadowing the film's disturbing content. Fincher actually drew, I believe, some of these pictures that were used in here, which I thought was very, very cool. What'd you think of that whole opening animation sequence?
You're gonna look at me, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but it's like the type of thing where like, I wish we could, mentally put together something. We could film something that looked that cool. How fun it would have been to put all of that together and shoot all of that. It's again an opening that's different than a lot of openings. Your description of it was perfect because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's out there. I this is like one of the times that I wish that we can get past copyright and just show it
Mm.
um to the audience. But hopefully this drives you to go see the movie if you haven't seen it, even though we're gonna kind of spoil some of it. But you know, visually disturbing, and it's really, really cool at the same time. Like I said earlier, the Nine Inch Nails song Closer just adds that, deeper, ominous, crazy stuff to it. I
Oh,
love the fact that it ends with "You Bring Me Closer to God" as it cuts to them going to the first victim, which is gluttony.
mm.
They go to a filthy apartment where they see a larger man sitting down. They inspect him. He's like basically he's been dead for many days. He's been puking in a bucket underneath his table. It's disgusting, grotesque. It smells. Uh, they see that his stomach exploded because he overate himself. There looks to be receipts of groceries. So whoever was doing this to him left and came back and forced him to eat. Uh, Morgan Freeman and Mills react with a mixture of shock and disgust and professional detachment. Somerset plays more of the character that seems to be more serious and observant, analytical, while Mills is kind of right off the cuff, kind of more emotional, makes jokes when it should be, or kind of like should be made, tries to lighten the mood in certain aspects. And Mills is kind of like a little disturbed by certain things, while Somerset is more serious and kind of like doesn't show that it's bothering him to a degree. Uh, what do you think of this whole like opening scene of the gluttony case, Tone?
It's again, you getting the feeling of a seasoned detective in Morgan, and then you're getting the feeling of like somebody who's done it for like 5 years, and now he's in a new city, and he thinks he knows everything because he's did it for 5 years. When the reality is you don't really sometimes even I don't think in this movie Morgan Freeman knows everything. Even though he may act or think he does. Brad Pitt is just really cocky, really cocky.
Yeah, and the victim's appearance was actually really done very well. It was achieved using a combination of prosthetics and special effects. His skin was scaly, like it was just disgusting. It always cracks me up when they look underneath the table and they see the puke bucket, and the cops like, oh,
Oh, oh, yeah.
that part makes me laugh. His house is very grimy, and that's a lot of places in this film. Like even the apartment of the police officers is very grimy looking, very like dirty. And I thought that's an awesome way because there's like no clean place in this film. Uh
Which the cinematography is just great.
yes.
By Darius Kanji. I mean, just does a really, really good job making it, as you said. Just 2 nights ago, I watched Chinatown again, and I had never thought of connecting Chinatown and Seven until you brought it up earlier. And there's a sheen on that movie, which it gives it a detective movie a really cool vibe.
hmm we learned that after they go and see this, crime scene, that Somerset is retiring in 6 days. He asked to not be on this case anymore. He doesn't want to do it. We see him going and typing on he's typing his reports, talking to his captain, basically telling his captain Arlie Emery that he doesn't want to be part of the case anymore. Uh, to give it to Mills. Well, he actually asked that Mills be taken off as well. Mills says he wants it. The captain tells Mills to leave and says, "I'm sorry, buddy, you're going to have to take this one," because Somerset believes this is going to be a long-standing case, and he doesn't want to be part of it. He wants to just leave. Uh, due to his dismay, he has to keep doing the detective work on it. We then learn that there has been another victim to have come out, and this is a victim of a lawyer, Eli Gold, who was actually hogtied and killed in his office. Very graphically, a pound of flesh is missing from his body. It's in a scale. Hence, if you know where we're going, as we say, a pound of flesh. And greed is written apart on the wall in blood. Uh, he's been brutally murdered. Like I said, his hands are severed. He's forced to choose between his life and his wife's life, and buying the sin of greed. The crime scene is soaked with blood everywhere. The messages on the wall. The brutality is like really bad in this part. Unlike Gluttony, where there's just a guy sitting there, this man has is basically blood everywhere. Brad Pitt explains that the cushion is soaked through with sweat. The seat he was sitting in was soaked through with sweat. The scene's design and the choice of location were intended to highlight the theme of greed and emphasize the disparity between wealth and moral decay. That's really, really well done in here because it's a very high and fancy place. Even though it looks grimy, it's a higher and fancier area for the scene. Gene Borkman, who plays the victim, was hogtied and only wearing his underwear for most of the shooting. He was covered in over 2 gallons of fake blood, and the blood was so thick and sticky that his knees became stuck to the floor.
Ooh.
Yes. It's crazy. What'd you think of this scene of the greed victim?
Again, it's as you just described it. It's to imagine. I like to think about what you're talking about, the blood. All the blood that was used in this scene, and you're telling me that the actor, it was too sticky. Like it's just crazy to think about because I've seen this movie so many times, and you take in such seriousness that this guy was stuck to the floor. I like that.
Yeah, and again, Mills is on the job for this one. Somerset isn't, but Somerset comes up with some great points, explaining, some of his research into this case. Reason being is because he has the police captain come and talk to him while he's in his office typing his report, and the police captain brings him some evidence that was dug out of the body of the gluttony victim. I think he said it was plastic or whatever it was. It might have been, but we find out later it was flooring, as Somerset went actually to the apartment and found the chips that were in his body that the killer made him eat, matched the floor at his kitchen to where he had to move the fridge to find this greed, to find gluttony in Greece, which is ridiculous to all this planning that this killer is going through. One of my favorite lines in this film is when, Arlie Emery's asking Morgan Freeman, "What are you going to do with your life? Like, why didn't you want to do this anymore? You're going to be missing all this." And he says, 4 days ago, a man was walking his dog and he was robbed. He was vulnerable, had no weapons, was on the floor, and the person stabbed out both of his eyes. And he goes, I heard about, no, it's Arlie Emery responds, "I heard about that. I read about it." And he goes, "I don't understand this world anymore," which is showing his distaste and like his misunderstanding for the world. But after going to the first victim's place and finding that information of greed, and then now gluttony, and now seeing the greed aspect, he comes up with this line.
There are 7 deadly sins, Captain. Gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, pride, lust, and envy. 7. Hold on.
That's not even my desk.
You can expect 5 more of these.
I love that line. It's not even my desk, because he answers the call. I love that little. He also goes and says he does not want to be part of this. This can't be his last case. And he's walking off, and Emery's saying, "Somerset," he's like, "Give it to him. He asked for it." And he points to Brad Pitt's character, and Mills goes, "I'm all over it." which cracks me up. We then see, Mills moving into Somerset's office. Somerset moves over from his work, and they're kind of like sitting there. He answers the phone to his wife. His wife invites Somerset to the house for dinner, just kind of like to get to know his partner, I guess. So that he goes to their house, they have dinner, they make jokes. Uh, when the dinner is over, they kind of are bonding. They're going over the greed victims, case file, and they're going back and forth discussing, you know, what clues can they find, and they're showing both of their analytical, deep thinking thoughts. Somerset, like I said, is more detail oriented. He's more of the intellectual level, while Mills tries to go more of a motive way, thinking the person is psychotic. Uh, they then decide to go see the victim's wife at a safe house due to the point that in the pictures of the scene, her eyes are actually colored in red. They're circled in blood, meaning that she saw something out of place, maybe something that she knows. They go and show her the crime scene photos, and it's pretty tough. Like just watching that part, when she's crying,
I know.
and they try. The best part is they try to cover up his body with a sticky note on the photos. But I mean, you're asking her to look at photos of her husband being killed,
Mm-hmm.
which is ridiculous. She
Tough.
does notice, though. Go ahead, Tom.
No, it's tough. It's just like you said, looking at those photos, and all it's over, it's a sticky note.
Yeah, she does notice that in one of the photos that the painting in her husband's office is upside down, which makes them go back to the scene of the crime. There, they cut open the back of the photo of the actual painting, and they don't find anything there, to where Mills is like, he's fucking with us. This is us. He goes to a desk and bends over and he's like, this is us right now. He's fucking us. And, Somerset says, hold on, gets on top of the desk where the picture was hanging, and Dustin finds prints. And they have, the print technicians come out, and they, find prints that eventually hit with a potential suspect, a former client of Eli Gold. What'd you think of that whole, detective thing?
Again, great detective work. Again, I mean, Brad Pitt's always in the movie quick to like. That's his whole thing. He reminds me a lot of like how I was described like in middle school. Like you're not paying 100% attention. You think that you know everything, but you're missing one little detail. Like he's got it all under. Like at this point, Morgan Freeman is the one who's actually got the wheel. Brad Pitt, he thinks he's got the wheel. He's going down a slippery slope.
Definitely. I still crack up over this is us. This is us, as he goes over the desk. It's a hilarious scene. When they get woken up by the police chief to let them know that the police captain to let them know that the fingerprints have hit, they are going to go to an abandoned apartment with the SWAT team to go and arrest this individual who they believe is the killer. For them, this is a very, very crazy scene in the film when, first, the SWAT tells them, "SWAT before dicks," before they break down the door, they bust in. A lot of, cameos are in this film that I realized today when I was rewatching it. John C. McGinley is a SWAT leader. We saw him in Platoon. For those who know who he is off the top of their heads, he's in Scrubs. He's the boss of Zach what's his name? Zach's character. What's Zach's last name from Scrubs?
Now, isn't it Zachary Levi? Is that no?
No.
Braff. Zach Braff.
Zach Braff. Thank you.
Yeah, you had me on the first guy. I'm like,
Yeah.
what did we get wrong here?
Yeah.
No, you're right. It's not.
Yeah, Zach Braff. His boss character, who's like the smart ass doctor. But he plays a small role, but he's in it. They go into a room. There's a bunch of, car air fresheners hanging down everywhere. The scene is very disgusting. And they look and they see a body underneath on a bed, strapped down, missing a hand, with sores all over it. They assume the man is dead. they call the detectives in to come look at it. They, one of the worst parts is that I thought was horrible was the person was a criminal, and John C. McGinley's character goes over him and says, "You got everything you deserved," which is really messed up. And I've heard stories of people being told stuff like this, by police officers, which is really jacked up. And he starts coughing, which scares the shit out of everybody. They find out he is alive. There's a lot of close-ups in this part of the film. One thing I want to mention though was on the way to this crime scene, they actually have a conversation, Somerset and Mills, and Mills is telling the story of a police officer dying in the line of duty. Basically, they're talking about have they ever drawn their guns and have they ever fired him? And Mills says that he's fired his gun. Somerset, he says he's only drawn his gun 3 times in his career. Mills' story talks about a person that he got hit. One of the person he went in was a rookie. The person next to him got hit with a gun shot, and he died on the way to the ambulance. And he remembers distinctly the ambulance ride there and him passing away, but can't remember the man's name. Again, going to the kind of the overtone of the film that there's so much violence that it just kind of gets washed away under a lot of things. You remember the acts, but not the people that it happens to. Sam chimes in here. You met John C. McGinley at GRF. Very nice man. Guarantee rate field. He is a very nice man, huh? Awesome.
Very cool. That's awesome.
We find out that the victim we find out from the victim's doctor when they bring him to the hospital, who's also played by Richard Portnow, who, if you guys don't know who he is, he's actually Detective, not Councilman Percy from Goodfellas. He's also Mel in The Sopranos, Junior Sopranos lawyer. He plays a doctor in this film. He tells him that whoever was keeping this person alive had given him antibiotics to prevent the sores from being infected. He's also probably going to die. His tongue was chewed off months ago. And any form of shock will basically kill him, and his brain is basically mush. What do you think of this whole scene of the sloth?
This is what really, when I'm in the movie theater, at the age of 13 or 12, going, what this is it felt real. Okay, it felt real. Like it wasn't like watching Jason or Freddy. I mean, it felt like you were really at the crime scene, and whoever's doing this was, man, insane. And the way that he popped up like that the first time, it stuck with me.
Yeah. And the way the sloth looked, the victim, great. We were showing a visual of it. It took 14 hours for the makeup to be done on a sloth. It's a big emotional response to this, and I feel the film's broader, horror like framework of the film. It's very, very hard to look at.
Very. That's hard. Real quick there.
Yeah, very hard to look at. We then, see Somerset and Mills again talking. Somerset actually tells Mills he would like to stay on the case 6 more days to help him solve it. We find out that the fingerprints were actually from the sloth, and it was made by John Doe. We also find, as Somerset did earlier in the film, he goes to the library. I didn't mention it as a scene, but it's a cool little scene. He goes to the library to do his research for Mills before he decides to start helping him out. And he finds out that the killer actually likes to read a lot of books like Paradise Lost, a lot of religious books by St. Thomas Aquinas. And while they're discussing this case, he's trying to say this guy is, he's extremely bad. He has, all these tendencies and whatnot. And they're discussing this outside the apartment, and a photographer comes by.
Excuse me. Hey, what are you doing? Close crime scene. Get the fuck out of here. I got a right to be here. Get out of here. Fucking right to be here. Get out. Fucking jerk. Jeez. Fuck you. I got your picture, man. Oh, yeah? I got your picture. Oh, yeah? Detective Mills. M-I-L-L-S. Fuck off. Fuck you. How did they get here so fucking quick?
They pay police for the information. and they pay well.
And I love that part when he's like, "I'm sorry, man. I overreact." And he's like, "Oh, that's no problem. I love to see people act out their emotions." It's just a great little scene there where the photographer comes out at the outside of the crime scene for Sloth. They eventually, Somerset comes up with this idea saying, "Hey, I know uh, possible ways we can look at this victim, you know, ways of maybe possibly find this killer." They find receipts to places in, you know, of chemicals and whatnot for this lost place. I'm sorry, I'm gonna rambling on right now. I don't mean to, but they find receipts in there. It's and he's fine. Somerset comes up with the idea, hey, maybe we can narrow it down to the actual killer, but there's a kind of a shady way we can do it. Somerset comes up with this idea to go to the FBI, and we learned that the FBI has been keeping track of people who rent library books that are flagged as a guide. Now they don't use this as evidence; they use it more as a guide. Like if somebody, he said, gives an example, somebody took out Mein Kampf, or somebody took out, all these Paradise Lost, the St. Thomas Aquinas, Dante's Inferno, stuff like that. Which always cracks me up because Mills tries to read these books and he can't understand it. He actually has a hissy fit in his car while he's trying to read Dante, and he has a officer buy him the Cliff Notes for them, which cracks me up. Somerset comes up with this about the killer.
This guy's methodical, exacting, and worst of all, patient.
He's a nutbag. Just because the fucker's got a library card doesn't make him Yoda.
Yeah, it always cracked me up when he does that scene. But from this bears fruit. The crazy part about this whole scene is when they go see the FBI, agent, is it's played by Mark Boone Jr., who's from he's from a lot of films. Yeah, Sons of Anarchy fame. He's also in the first Batman.
Sure is.
A very good character actor. When you see him, you know who he is. They end up at John Doe's house to where they're arguing outside his house, like how they're gonna get in, and they see a man walk up and just start shooting at them. They both draw their guns. Mills chases after the man. They go through a crazy chase. He falls down the fire escape, hurts his arm during the rain, and the killer points a gun to his head to where Mills says, "Please don't." And the killer presses it to his head. After they initially fought and he punched Mills on the floor, he eventually pulls away his gun and runs away. Fincher wanted something different for the chase sequence with Mills and Somerset chasing John Doe through the apartment building. Brad Pitt told the director he hated chase scenes where the chaser always seems to know where the person is being chased is. Fincher took this idea and ran with it. He and Pitt worked on how Mills should be reacting during the chase, reluctantly going around corners and not knowing where John Doe was at any moment. I like the idea of a guy with clay feet going, "I don't want to get shot," he explains what Pitt wrote. Brad Pitt broke his arm during the filming of the scene. The injury was incorporated into the storyline to maintain continuity and the realism of Mills's character. And then the chase sequence was designed to heighten the film's tension and showcase the detective's desperate pursuit of the killer. Awesome chase scene. He runs away, pulls the gun away. Eventually he is saw, Somerset comes up to him. They go back to the apartment. He's bleeding from getting the shit beat out of him. And he's like, Mills is trying to tell Somerset, "We have to go into this apartment. He just shot us. We got probable cause." To which Somerset responds, "We don't have probable cause. We're not even supposed to be here. We can't tell them what the Bureau is doing because even though it's illegal, we can't tell them what they're doing. We have no probable cause to be here." To which Mills is like, "Oh, okay." As Somerset turns away, he goes and just kicks open the door. And Somerset's like, "You stupid asshole." To where they find a homeless person outside to make up a story that she had called the police for them to come there. And the way that she just rambles on, she's like, "Oh yeah, that's how I'm killing people." He's like, "Okay, yeah, go get something to eat. Go get something to eat," to get her out. What do you think of that whole chase scene tone? And then, the eventual busting open of the apartment and the homeless person.
Probably one of my great favorite scenes is the scene where they're out there in the rain and he puts the gun to his head because it's, again, Brad Pitt, as you stated, he's that's what's great is the way, they're showing him. I get the impression when watching him that he's going to catch him right there. You know what I mean? Just like he kicks open the door. He's like a cowboy and he doesn't feel like there is a whole lot he has to like follow in this, which ends up getting him almost killed outside as opposed to not getting killed. I like this scene a lot. It's one of my faves in the movie.
Yeah, and one of my favorite scenes is actually the scene that's coming up next is when they actually explore John Doe's apartment. It's again filthy, dark, filled with weapons and all these different pictures and like baby fetuses and like in jars. A room full of notebooks. The notebooks were handwritten by the production team, and each book contain unique, detailed entries to showcase John Doe's obsession and meticulous planning. One of the stories is Somerset reads out here.
On the subway today, a man came up to me to start a conversation. He made small talk, this lonely man, talking about the weather and other things. I tried to be pleasant and accommodating, but my head began to hurt from his banality. I almost didn't notice it had happened, but I suddenly threw up all over. He was not pleased, and I couldn't stop that.
It's a crazy scene. He also goes into saying the world is made of puppets. Uh, all John Doe's books were real. They were written for the film, like I said. They took 2 months to complete and cost $15,000. According to Morgan Freeman, 2 months is about the time it would take for the police to read all the books. He even says that in the film, around the clock, it would take them about 2 months to read all those books. While exploring the apartment as well, Mills comes upon a bathtub with a picture of himself and Morgan Freeman, alluding that the photographer was actually John Doe who took the picture of him. It's pretty crazy. Like I love that little twist they throw in there, like, oh, he was there, and it's makes a lot of sense for like if you think about like serial killers and their MO going back to the crime of the scene, the scene of the crime to kind of get pleasure from what they've done. But yeah, it's just creepy that he took a picture of him and he knows his name now. Remember, he told him his name was Mills, Detective Mills, Mills. Go fuck yourself. But crazy stuff. And while they're in the apartment, the whole team is there. They find out they have his money, they have his notebooks. They get a phone call from John Doe who congratulates them and says he admires the police work they did. But he has some things planned and he doesn't want to spoil them before he hangs up. Just a creepy phone call, Tone. What do you think of this whole series of events?
Again, from the notebooks, again, the way I like the way, as you stated, I guess now I don't see Gene Hackman because this is another part. Just Morgan reading that notebook line right like that. Come on, man, that's like perfect. Like the way he reads it, because you hear it in like a crazy way, but like Morgan Freeman's crazy way. It's cool.
Yeah, and while they're doing this search at the apartment, they find a receipt to a leather shop. To which they go to the leather shop and they find a device that a man created that they don't mention. And they're like, "You made this for him?" He's like, "I thought he was a stage performer." Then he leaves. He's like, the picture. The guy, it's just a crazy. His name is Wild Bill too, which is kind of funny. I saw his name was Wild Bill, the guy who plays him. But yeah, just that whole little scene of them in the like sadist leather shop. So like, what do you think about that?
Again, so much going on in this movie in the dark frame. You know what I mean? Being in a sadistic shop. You know what I mean? Crazy.
Yeah, and they go. They get another call about a woman who was found. It's actually a woman they saw a picture of in John Doe's apartment. They go into a club where there's music playing, like you said, and they're like, "Turn that shit off! It's so loud." and there's a guy screaming in a room, "Get this off me! Get this off me!"
Great
Sweating
performance by Lee.
profusely. Yes, sweating profusely. We find that this woman's dead in bed. Blood is everywhere. It's a crazy scene. They have him in the interrogation room, and they ask him what happened. He said a man held a gun to his head and made him have sex with the prostitute.
Oh
Uh,
God! Let me
yeah,
search
yeah.
for-
With basically the device he had a knife on the end, so he basically stabbed her while having sex with her. The character was played by Leland Orser, who would breathe in rapidly in and out so that his body would be overly saturated with oxygen, giving him the ability to hyperventilate. He also did not sleep for days in order to achieve the character's disoriented look. Uh, he's also in Alien Resurrection as one of the aliens that get the chest thing, the alien busts through his chest, but he was awesome in this portrayal. Just say it's a horrible, like disturbing scene, this whole scene. Also, appearance by Michael Massey as the owner of the brothel. You might know him from The Crow.
Leland Orser also plays Test Tube in Escape from LA, John Carpenter, which is crazy. But go on, I'm sorry. I had to
No, totally fine. Michael Massey is in the film too.
he does a
You
good
know,
job.
from The Crow as Fun Boy. And this is actually after he took a year off from The Crow due to the Brandon Lee tragedy,
Mhm.
and this is one of his first films back. Just crazy stuff here, you know. And while all this is going on, Somerset receives a phone call from Tracy Mills, who is the wife of Detective Mills, and she asks him to meet her at a diner the next day if he can, which he reluctantly agrees to go. The crazy thing about this, Tone, is when they go eat breakfast at that diner, John Doe appears.
Really?
Yes. If you watch when they pan out and they show the diner after they show the food and they pan out and show people coming into the restaurant, he's walking into the restaurant.
Really?
Yes.
Insane.
So it kind of explains like kind of how he knows certain things that happen later on. Again, Mills did give him his name, but she explains to Somerset that she is pregnant and she does not want to, you know, bring a child into this world, whether the city where they're at. She doesn't like the city. And Somerset gives her basically a personal story that he was with somebody who was pregnant, he was in love with, and he started thinking about all the horrible things he sees every day and how can he bring a child into this world to the point where he actually wore his partner down and they decided not to keep the baby. He's just showing his distaste for the world he lives in, and you know all the hate and all that stuff, and he doesn't know how another person would want to be in this world. To which you know they agreed they're not going to tell Mills, they're not going to tell him until later, especially during this case because they don't want him to think about it. I know it's kind of not of a real big important scene, but what'd you think about that scene, Tone?
Paltrow isn't in the movie a whole lot, so like you need these scenes like this one to show who she is. So when you get that turn at the end, you feel it a lot more. Like if you don't get this scene right here in the diner, and then you get that turn at the end, the turn doesn't really mean as much because this is like the meat of a real good meaty part of the whole story right here, even though it's something so simple.
Yeah. It's crazy stuff, man. After the lust scene where they find the prostitute that was raped and they go through the interrogation, they go to a bar. And this is one of my favorite parts of the film and one of my favorite dialogues of the film, to where they're talking about champion things and how can people do such horrible things? And Mills gives a great.
It's easier to lose yourself in drugs than it is to cope with life. It's easier to steal what you want than it is to earn it. It's easier to beat a child than it is to raise it. Now, love costs, takes effort and work.
It's such a great monologue, and that whole scene is really, really done well with their going back and forth, and they're trying to go into their philosophies on life, and really again shows into Somerset's psyche and the way he views the world compared to the way Brad Pitt views the world, Mills views the world. Um, Mills thinks that there's a lot of bad people, but there are also some good, and there's just a lot of crazy things that happen to where Somerset kind of makes it seem like there's no hope. Really, really powerful scene. During this time at the bar, they get a phone call, or Mr. John Doe calls in again, and he just says comically, "I've gone and done it
Done it
again,"
again.
in a creepy way. It was again to increase suspense and provide additional insight into what he's doing. They get very irritated with this. You know, these guys they go to a woman's apartment, and pride is written on the wall as it's shown in this video. This picture, great picture tone. She was a model, and basically John Doe gave her the choice to either live disfigured or die by taking all the sleeping pills. He ends up cutting off her nose. They don't show her face without the nose, but they describe it. Uh, the scene design and the choice of location were tend to underscore the film's uh, scenes of vanity. It's like a white room. It's one of the cleanest rooms in the whole
Yeah.
film to show like pure and white. The message on the victim's body was carefully crafted to reflect the killer's psychological motivations. Like pride, the cutting of the skin. He again gave her the option to live or die. John Doe is just a real fucked up individual.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, it's another. So this is the fifth murder. So we have two more murders as Somerset believes is going to happen. Again, while they're going back to the precinct after this murder, we find again Somerset saying he wants to stick on and stay with Mills to help him out. He'll stay on for another 6 days. He explains to him to where Mills is like, "Oh, you're not gonna do me any favors." They walk up the stairs to go back to their office, and we see a man covered in blood scream out, "Detective!" Yeah, "I think you're looking for me," is what he says. And we see the killer is Kevin Spacey, played as John Doe. And it's hilarious when Mills turns around, looks at him, and says, "Get the fuck on the ground. Don't move." Because he knows that's the guy who beat the shit out of him earlier. They arrest him and bring him up. They find out during in the interrogation room that Joe has two types of blood, his and somebody else on his body. You don't know who the second victim is. They find that Doe has been shaving off and cutting off his fingerprints, basically cutting his skin, which is brutally painful. They don't know who he is. All I know is he's financed very, very highly by somebody, or he was born wealthy. There's very, very little backstory on him. And through his lawyer, they learn that there are other victims that he's willing to bring them to, but only Detective Somerset, Detective Mills, which the lawyer repeatedly says. He goes, if Detective Somerset, Detective Mills don't bring him to the site, those bodies will be found and the police department will be embarrassed. So he's basically saying, I know where there's other bodies at, I'll admit to them. But if you don't have them take me to where to show them, you're going to be basically, embarrassed by the public that you didn't save these people or you didn't, recover these bodies. What do you think of that whole, like, him basically turning himself in and the whole interrogation?
A big fan of the gentleman who plays his lawyer, Richard Sheff. He's in Young Guns 2. He plays Ratbag. He's also in Speed. But again, the way he turns himself in, you're watching this movie, and right here you're saying, is it over? Is this it? He just turned himself in. The movie's got to be over. They got the killer. It's done. And I think that's what I like, is this is when you get the door is about to open up to, if you thought it was insane in the notebooks, if you thought it was insane, now we're going to show you what insane is. But you don't know that at this point. You're just like, wow, 2 covers of blood. Well, we got to know who that other person's blood is.
Yeah, Richard Sheff was also in Lost World. He was Eddie Carr.
Great.
Eaten by the Transformers Rex.
Yes.
Yeah, just crazy stuff. So they agree to go take John Doe to the site. It's basically an desolated area. While they have SWAT, of course, around them while they're driving. In the car, they have some interesting conversations to where Doe says his message is to reach people.
Wanting people to listen, you can't just tap them on the shoulder anymore. You have to hit them with a sledgehammer. And then you'll notice you've got their strict attention.
And that's what he wants to do, is preach his message. He goes on to say, uh, he explains his reasons for killing the victims. I love when he goes to the lawyer and he says, well, not to mention the lawyer I killed, and I'm pretty sure you're secretly thanking me on that one. It's he goes on to say that what he's done will be talked about for years and years to come, to where Mills gets upset and tells him, "You're no messiah."
You're no messiah. You're a movie of the week. You're a fucking t-shirt at best.
And this kind of makes John Doe very upset because he says, "You guys wouldn't have found me." And he goes, "No, I distinctly remember us at your door." And to where Doe responds, "And I distinctly remember breaking your face." Where it's ridiculous. And as they approach the area to where Doe has told them, he gets antsy. You can see him getting excited, to which Somerset acknowledges and tells him, "You're getting excited." Another funny part, like, in this movie's horribly, it's a bad, disturbing movie, but there is a funny part when they get out of the car and Somerset's looking forward and sees a body, and he's like, Mills is like, "What is it?" He's like, "A dead dog." To which John Doe responds, "I didn't do that." Which, as they go in the spot, they are approached by a delivery man who delivers a box to them. Mills gives the box for him and tells him to go back to his car. No, to go away, run away, which he does. They find out he's legit, and he gets arrested, detained as he runs away by SWAT. Mills opens the box, and we get this famous line of what he is shocked by, and we get this famous line from Brad Pitt, probably the most famous line of the film.
I saw you with the box. What was in the box?
Because I envy your normal life.
Put the gun down, baby.
It seems that envy is my sin.
No, what's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
We find that John Doe had went and killed Tracy Mills. He says that he envied their perfect life, and he tried to have it like Mills did with his wife, and it didn't work out. So he killed her, and he cut her head off with the unborn baby and put it in a box to be delivered to Mills, to which Mills looks at, becomes distraught, and now he turns into the seventh deadly sin of wrath, to where John Doe wants him to kill him, Mills to kill him, where we have Somerset telling him, "Don't do it, don't do it. This is what he wants," to where Mills just shoots him in the head after crying. And then you hear the SWAT say, "He shot him in the head. He shot him in the head." Just a very, very powerful, dramatic scene. Tone, what'd you think of this whole ending? This whole aftermath of the envy, the death, and then Mills eventually killing John Doe.
I'm gonna say 4 things here, and then you're gonna say the end of the movie, which is my favorite part. But we're gonna go through these 4 parts. Number 1, when they're in the car and they're talking, and the way he says, "Only in a world as sick and twisted as this would you look at me and keep a straight face and tell me that these people were innocent." Such a crazy line to say because, it is such an insane, these people weren't good people. But again, you can't do that. Number 2, the coloring in the scene. You can see it in this picture if you're watching on the screen. It's like this part of the afternoon, like that 4:35 before it gets to dusk. It's like, number 3, Morgan Freeman in this whole scene is where my favorite thing is, because Morgan Freeman knows exactly what's going on. He just can't, as they're dry, like, he can't put it all together until it's actually coming together right in front of him. But he knew this is where it was heading. Brad Pitt, he is wrath. Okay. I often think to the point of, when's if he did put the gun down? I think of my own life. Could I put the gun down? Could you walk away? Because if you walk away, what then is Spacey's reaction? Does he start screaming? Is he crying in the sand because you didn't live it up to his. They gave him everything Spacey wanted. If you don't give him that last thing, what does Spacey's reaction look like? But we don't know, and I always like to think about that stuff. But just honestly, as stated here, the scene shook me to my core also, and it's a scene that even to this day it sticks with me because back to a little while ago, the Gwyneth Paltrow, the little bit you see of her in that, she is the only light in the movie. So now when they pull the card out to you and they show you this is who we killed, the person who you in this whole dark movie knew is to be innocent, I just think is to be one of the greatest shocks in movie history.
Yeah, definitely. And they take him to the mills. They take him in custody to where the captain says, "We'll take care of him." And we find out Somerset says he's going to stay on the job. And he ends with, like you said, one of the best parts of the film, a quote.
Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." I agree with the second part.
To where the film ends. So that is our film breakdown of Seven. Any final thoughts, Tom?
That ending, even you playing it right now, if we were in the room, you'd look over and I got goosebumps all up and down my. I've heard listen to that line so many times because it's even more prevalent today than in a lot of other things because it's just so true. And in the movie, he was saying it the whole movie as you played in the other little clips, which are just so great and poignant to think about because even when he's talking to Gwyneth Paltrow and he's talking about that life and the woman who could have had his child and all of that, you feel it. And honestly, I don't even know why I said earlier Gene Hackman could have been in this movie because there is nobody else than Morgan Freeman. Honestly, I think this movie is just as good as his performance in Shawshank because it's just a different side, but emotionally just as charged.
Yeah, I love how you contradicted yourself as we went
I know.
into the film breakdown. That's awesome.
I love it.
This film, a lot of takes you to a lot of dark places, shows the cruelty of the human condition, the world we live in. It's kind of like a look out of how disgusting the world is, and it gives you two kind of viewpoints of that line you said by Spacey, like how in a world this ugly, only you would call those people innocent. And yes, that pertains to a lot of things that are true. Uh, that's why I love this movie so much. It holds up today. It still like has an impact. I love the fact that it's ominous on where it takes place because it could take place anywhere. This could happen anywhere, and not just America. It could happen in any country, uh, you know, anywhere in the world, basically. Morgan Freeman, like you said, it would probably be one of his greatest performances of his career, and he's had a massive career. The chemistry between him and Brad Pitt is very, very done well. It's so extremely, it's powerful, and that's why I think this film like sticks with me to this day. Do you want to get into some critical reception and a fan theory, my friend?
Let's get to it.
You know that fat cocksucker says I look like the Shah of Iran?
Who does? Tony. I never got that at all.
So the critical reviews of this film, the early reviews upon its release in 1995, Seven was met with generally positive reviews. Critics praised its innovative narrative, dark atmosphere, and strong performances. The film was lauded for its deep exploration of the seven deadly sins and its unsettling graphic content. The screenplay and direction were highlighted as its key strengths. The cinematography and direction by David Fincher's direction and the film's cinematography received acclaim for creating a unique and immersive experience. Like you said, Tom, the way it's shot, the graininess of the layers of the film, the lighting was perfectly done. Critics appreciate the film's thematic depth, including its portrayal of human nature and moral decay. The disturbing and provocative content was seen as both engaging and thought-provoking. Fincher's ability to build tension and maintain a sense of dread throughout the film was frequently mentioned as a significant achievement. Some quotes for some famous critics. One of the greats, Roger Ebert, says Seven is one of the most effective thrillers of its time, a dark and troubling film that explores the limits of human depravity. Janet Meslin of the New York Times said David Fincher's Seven is a brilliantly twisted crime thriller that manages to do both grotesque and compelling the theater. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone said Fincher's Seventh is a masterpiece, disturbing film that combines brilliantly twisted script with an atmosphere of mounting dread and tension. The film's box office performance was really, very good. It had $327 million on a $33 million budget, making a blockbuster hit. And the film's intense and graphic content attracted a broad audience, contributing to its strong box office performance and enduring popularity. In terms of viewer reactions, this film actually spread a lot due to word of mouth. It had some trailers, but it wasn't advertised like it was like films are big blockbuster hits. It was kind of like shown and then word of mouth actually kind of exploded out. So that's kind of crazy that it made $300 million just mostly by word of mouth publicity tone.
Crazy. I mean, it's I'm still thinking of this friend of mine that I had way back when. It was like, gotta see Seven. And we're like in seventh grade. Like, gotta see Seven. Like, you know about Seven? Like, I mean, like it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, over time, Seven has become a cult classic known for its impactful storytelling and memorable characters. The influence extends beyond the genre. Like we said, there's influences in Longlegs. There's also influences in Zodiac from Seven, which is another Fincher film. It's the gold standard in terms of it took what Science of Lands was and built upon that, and I think it made a perfect recipe for a film that should continue to influence shows like Mindhunter and other crime dramas in the future. Not to view it this exact copy, but to have some inspirational homage from it, which is something I think that should be done. What about you?
Definitely agree with all of that. This movie is a complex machine, and it's cool that other movies can even. I'm not even saying that this movie there can't be something that can't be created that is better than Seven, and using what Seven started. It's just a really high bar as far as thriller goes.
Yeah. Did you know in 2002 there was a sequel planned for this film? New Line Cinema proposed a sequel named 8 that would be based on a repurposed spec script titled Solence by Ted Griffin, about a psychic serial killer who is pursued by a similarly psychic detective, Somerset. The idea was abandoned after the principal cast and crew, including Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, expressed no intention to return for the sequel. David Fincher said, "I would be less interested in that than I would in having cigarettes put out in my eyes." The script was made into the standalone thriller named Silence in 2015, which was a critical and commercial failure. Yeah, it's I don't know.
I am not amused.
No. I mean, I think I would really have a hard time if that came out, like, to, like, have a straight face and not, like, react in a way that you'd be like,
I'm not mad.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad he did not do that. Going into a fan theory tone. This fan theory is given us from the great Reddit area of Reddit. For those who don't know who Reddit is a forum, and they have great subreddits like fan theories and film theories. And me being a nerd likes to read stuff like that. It's titled Seven. Somerset is really the mastermind serial killer, not John Doe. It's by Dorinda in the subreddit fan theories. And he opens up like this. Okay, hear me out. I just finished watching the 1995 film, David Fincher's film Seven, with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. And the entire movie, I was ready for Morgan Freeman to be uncovered as the obvious mastermind behind the serial murders, and here's why. Warning, spoilers ahead. Well, thank you, Dorinda. You gave us spoilers. And the movie's only been out for 30 years, but thank you. The film opens with a neat, tidy, organized, and living all alone detective Somerset, aka Morgan Freeman, a perfect serial killer introduction, like Dexter. After all these years, Somerset, being the veteran he is, would know exactly how to get away with murder. Somerset obviously doesn't like Mills from the beginning. He doesn't want him on the case, and even asks Mills why he moved to the city and why he picked that city specifically. Somerset is going to retire soon and makes it obvious to everyone that he will be happy to leave that dreadful place. Somerset is invited by Mills' wife to have dinner with them, where he tells Mills' wife that he has never been married himself and tells them that thirst staying love is rare these days. Envy? Question mark. Somerset is obviously a regular nightly visitor of the library because the night watchman tells Somerset he will miss them when he's retired. Where there he does research, in which case he wouldn't need a library card that could hold a record on him because he already knows the library holds those records on flagged books. He scolds the library night watchman for being in a place full of books but choosing to play poker instead, remarking that they aren't cultured, hence the very heroic killings. When Mills says the killer is obviously a crazy freak, Somerset gets really defensive and tells him not to say that and says the killer is obviously smart and meticulous. Somerset also tells Mills at the bar that the killer isn't crazy. The killer is just a normal, everyday person like them. Hello? Somerset doesn't get mad at the photographer for coming to the crime scene, and when Mills asks how the photographer knew about the crime scene so soon, Somerset says that there are people like the photographer who pay police for information, and they pay well. So obviously, he has been involved in corrupt business behind the scenes before, or possibly even tipped off that photographer himself, which might explain why the pictures of John Doe's apartment in the bathtub were the ones the photographer took of Mills. Somerset tells Mills' wife at breakfast that he didn't want to bring up a child in this cruel world and had told his ex-girlfriend not to have the baby when she said she was pregnant. The whole time Somerset is the one to figure everything out. He literally knows right after the first kill this won't stop and it's just a beginning to more killings. How would he know to brush the wall behind the picture for fingerprints? How would he know to put tiny pieces of plastic into the floor and then pull the refrigerator from the wall? Even the library card on John Doe seems like a very planned stretch out to make leading Mills to be a perfectly stereotypical serial killer liar. Lair, it says. I don't know why he's writing his little off here. Mills does absolutely nothing for the case except break into John Doe's apartment, which Somerset really didn't want him to do at the time, possibly because it didn't go along with his plan. Something needed to be planted? Question mark. Somerset runs the entire show. Mills is like the audience, just discovering it as it unfolds. Also, if John Doe had planned out everything so perfectly, why would he pick Mills' wife to kill? First of all, she's innocent, and the whole time he said he was killing terrible, not innocent people. And he doesn't even know her or anything about her. But Somerset, he does know her. And he knows she is pregnant and she shouldn't bring a cruel child into this cruel world. And the strangest part is when John Doe turns himself in, he shouts, "Hey, I know you," to someone, but we don't know who, which could be Somerset, a small clue given to the audience. The whole movie is basically screaming at Somerset to be the perfect killer going out with a bang from his dreadful job. So I was actually disappointed when John Doe was the killer. I just don't understand why all of these scenes would have been written in for no reason. You write a script knowing that every little detail must tell a piece of the story. Every line of dialogue unpacks something. Nothing is ever just words. Nothing is ever just junk words. But now, how cool would it be if there was a sequel to the movie Seven where Mills and Somerset continue working as partners? Somerset does say in the end of the movie that he will be sticking around despite his previous plans to retire, until it's revealed in his second meticulous mass murder that Somerset was the original mastermind behind it all. He even had gotten John Doe to do the first job for him. I don't know. I just felt like I need more answers after the movie ended. After reading some of the comments, I should say that prior to watching Seven, I had always been told it had an insane twist ending, sort of like Fincher's own other film, Fight Club. So when I started watching the film, I was immediately trying to figure out who the big unsuspected killer was. That might be the most shocking for a twist ending. Instead of just watching the movie separately as an individual story, I was watching Seven expecting something out of Chuck Palahniuk novel, which is why my Somerset theory seemed plausible. So this theory is a theory. I think he needs to watch the film more closely because stuff he explains is explained. Also, I think he kind of caught himself in that because I read the comments; they were going in on this guy. And he explains why he made the theory. What do you think about all that, Tom?
could be ridiculous. It could be starting to believe this. The idea could be cool if it was Morgan Freeman, but it wasn't. But I like those. Those are always awesome to hear just how far stretched some of these could go. I love it. It's my wheelhouse.
I think it was believable until he started talking about Mills's wife, and he's like, how does he know Mills? Well, Mills actually gave his name to the photographer, and John Doe says why he killed Mills's wife. She was innocent, which is why envy was his sin. He says, envy's why I try to be the perfect man. I was envious of you. But that is our full breakdown of Seven. We went through the development, a film breakdown with me rambling, and a great fan theory with the critical reception. Any closing thoughts, Tom?
Amazing movie, great breakdown. Go rewatch it again. For me, it's a highly rewatchable movie, even though and I don't say this, I don't say a lot of super dark movies that have a lot of, like, I'm not going to say Requiem for a Dream, watch that over and over. This movie got a lot of rewatchability to it, so rewatch it again. Yes, if you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. It's on Amazon Prime, I think, for like $4 to watch, or you can go find it at a movie store. I don't know if Best Buy doesn't sell digital copies anymore, Real Media anymore, but check it out. It's a classic. It should be praised more. Go ahead. Me and Katie walked into Best Buy for the first time in a long time, like last week, and I just started yelling about no physical media, and we had to leave. So no, they don't got that there anymore. No.
No physical media. What?
That's what I mean. You're talking to. I used to be like, this is like the greatest place ever. Best Buy, greatest store now. No physical media, but we're living in a digital age. Check it out.
I'm not mad.
Do it.
Yeah, but that is our review. Let's get into what we're gonna have coming up soon, my friend.
Let's do it.
Start, putting a bow on this show.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Coming soon.
Próximamente.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
What we got coming up, my man?
All right. So next weekend, we're going to take a little bit of a break. And if you can out there, folks, if you can during this little bit of a break, especially this Thursday, and you want to reach out and just watch Big Trouble in Little China for my main man, watch a good flick for him, say happy birthday. We're celebrating a birthday here at the show podcast. And it's, just want to say that, but we'll be back in 2 weeks from tonight, which is going to be again Friday night at 8:15, and with Alien Romulus coming out that weekend, we've decided that we're going to dig into some aliens / sci-fi type movies. We're each going to pick 5, like the old format, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, and we are going to pick some obscure films that are alien type. So I'm gonna try to reach into my treasure trove for this one. I know Tom will be too. It's gonna be a good one. So with Alien Romulus coming out, be sure to check it out. We're trying to keep the shows kind of to what's going on in current events with so it can kind of relate to what's going on right now instead of just picking like favorites, because that's cool, but we want to kind of keep it with current events. So that's what we'll be doing this from to the old format. As far as wishing people happy birthdays, but yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks, so I'm really, really looking forward to that. This was a real fun show for me. I really love this film tone. No better way to close it out than with the Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week, my friend.
Let's do it.
The Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week.
All right, tonight on my soundtrack pick of the week, Yampa, I'm going to try to ask you. It's a horror movie from 1994, and I'm going to play a clip from it. It's a musical related clip, and then I'll play why I picked this one.
No country western music, please. Every man has his limits.
The movie I have picked and the soundtrack that I have picked is the Brain Scan soundtrack. The reason why I picked this soundtrack, just this past Wednesday on the show, I talked about one of my favorite bands of all time, Primus. I'll never forget seeing this movie and hearing the song in the movie and immediately going out and buying it. Frank Langella playing the lead in this movie, Edward Furlong. This is why I tuned in, because this, who shockingly is celebrating a birthday today. How ironic. But that, again, great soundtrack. You got Mudhoney, White Zombie, you got Tad, you got just, it's a more of somewhere between a little bit more of a heavier type of soundtrack. Yes, the South Park, going down to South Park, gonna have a good yep, you got it. It's that. And again, if you haven't seen Brain Scanner, it's been a long time. It's worth your time.
Nice. Good callback, Tone. You were killing it with these
You know what I had to do? I had to do two things in the last week. I had to write down every movie that I picked at the beginning, and I had to go through all my soundtracks, because I'm like, I've done so many, I can't remember. I can't go do the same one again. And that's opened my mind to go, wow, I just haven't done so many. And I remember having my mom buy this soundtrack, and just really odd that I would have asked and wanted the Brain Scan soundtrack, because it was not an easy soundtrack to find at Best Buy or Circuit City or wherever I found it, because it wasn't like some huge movie that was a huge success or anything.
Yeah, awesome pick too. George Clinton composed this soundtrack too.
Sure did.
One Nation in the Groove.
Sure did.
So that is our show, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in, seeing us on either the YouTubes or on whatever you get your favorite podcast. We are over the 2-hour mark, so Michael Cotton, this one's for you. I really could talk 7. We could win another 4 hours. It's just us describing each scene in more depth. I don't know if you guys want to hear us ramble on, but he's probably one of my favorite episodes. Tone, we're 25 in the books for us. We've done 25 episodes. We're gonna keep chucking along. Be sure to check out the Sadistic Penguin Studios website, where we have blogs. We just had a couple blogs from CPG, one on the Robert Downey Jr. news of Doctor Doom, as well. He just released some Rage Against the Machine side projects, which is a nice
it was a good article.
little article he wrote. If you're into music, we also had the OG Aloha Mr. Hand release a new collector's corner dedicated to Willie Mays. That's up, and then also on our YouTube channel. We had the great Sugar Baggy do some hook up on music this week, my man.
Good stuff. It was a lot of fun. This next Wednesday, tune in. It's going to be a lot of fun. Got a lot of guests planned coming up. Just love talking music just as much as I love talking movies with you, my man.
Yes, I appreciate it, my friend. Great job by everyone getting drafting here. We'll be back next week as well. Be sure to check out the YouTube. We are so close to getting those to getting monetized. So if you haven't seen any of the older episodes, you want to check them out visually, check them out on our YouTube. We also check out the 31 Days of Horror if you want to get prepared for October. It is going to be making a comeback. I'll make a formal announcement there. So I will not live during October again.
I was thinking about you the other day with that. I'm like, shit, what's he gonna do?
Well, I have a schedule plan, so I'll start working on putting some in the can at the end of the month. Because last 2 years have almost killed me with school and everything too. But yeah, be sure to follow all our stuff. Shout out to all the Penguins, everybody, all our supporters. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thanks for tuning in today if you tuned in live. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with some alien films. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the At the Show podcast, a Sadistic Penguin Studios production.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do? Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?